order if I could. So, welcome everyone. And we will start with an executive session. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Very good. There are just two bills potentially that will exec today. And the second one, maybe not, depending on whether the sponsoring senator can make it to session. But we'll start with Senate Bill 496. And this is a bill that we heard, and it's relative to supervision and registration requirements for associates of broker dealers. And as I recall, it was pretty smooth testimony, little bit of objection, I think, from the Municipal Association, maybe? No, they were okay too? Yeah, okay, thank you for that. So from where I sit, it looks pretty reasonable to put forward. Do we have a motion?
I move on to pass on Senate Bill 496.
Okay, and we have a second from Senator Reardon. All in favor? Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? All right.
Move consent.
All right, we have motion for consent in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And we are on consent. All right, since we don't, yes. I'll take, Senator Fett can take this one out. Very good. Since Senator Richford is not yet here, we're going to go into recess. If he arrives, we'll come back into executive session. And if not, we'll resume at 9:45. Do I have a motion to come out of executive session? All right, and a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're out of executive session and in recess. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Senator David Rochefort, representing Senate District 1. I want to offer this amendment 2026-0432S. This is something that I had mentioned in my original testimony when I introduced the bill last week. The amendment just does two small things, but it adds clarity to the underlying bill. The first thing you'll notice is in section 1, the differences in the Roman numeral 2 through 6. And what the amendment does is it clarifies and more accurately portrays current practice in grading timber in New Hampshire. And this was done as a result of feedback that we got from folks in the industry, primarily the construction industry. I also took some calls from architects and engineers on this, and the folks that are doing this, and this gives a more accurate picture on how it's being done. The other thing it does is the bottom of the page, lines 31, 32, and then on the back. And what it says is that, you know, when engineers and architects are calling out certain materials, that licensed architects and engineers shall also consider and provide alternative options for construction utilizing SPFS. I think that's one of the things that we heard in testimony is that, you know, they're only given one, even though there are other options out there, builders are only given one when they're called out in the plans, and this would just provide that they mention other alternative options when detailing their plans. And that's all the amendment does, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
All right. Any questions for the senator? No? All right.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you being here. All right. We have a motion of ought to pass beyond the amendment. Okay, and a second. All right, any discussion? Yes, are we in executive session?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Then we move the amendment. Thank you for the procedure. All right. All right, so Senator Reardon is doing both of those. Do we have a second on the amendment?
Second.
Second. All right, also from Senator Murphy. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Move to pass as amended. We have a second from Senator Murphy as well. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Move consent.
Move for consent from Senator Murphy, seconded by Senator Reardon. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, and we consented it. I will take this one out. And I'll take a motion to come out of executive session unless there's something else for the good of the order. All right, we have a motion from Senator Reardon, a second from me. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are out of executive session and in recess for 3 minutes.
You stuck your head back in here.
He's here.
Did you exact this?
Committee out of recess and start with our first bill, which is Senate Bill 562. So I'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 562. This was a carryover from last week. Apologize for that. We'll get this going. Unfortunately, Senator Abbas isn't with us, but we have lovely Nicole to join us this morning. So please introduce yourself.
Good morning.
bill.
I'm Nicole O'Brien from the Senate President's Office. I'm introducing SB 562 on behalf of Senator Abbas. SB 562 establishes the Granite State Home Mitigation and Resiliency Program, which provides financial grants to homeowners to mitigate residential real property loss from severe weather events. This program would provide grants of up to $9,500 to New Hampshire resident homeowners for projects that will enhance their home's resiliency during severe weather. This will improve insurability, reduce insurance claims severity and frequency, and ultimately lower insurance premiums for all New Hampshire residents. This bill was a request from the New Hampshire Insurance Department, and I believe they are here to answer any questions you may have about the bill.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. Appreciate your testimony. All right. The New Hampshire Insurance Department is here. Mr. Betancourt, good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is DJ Betancourt, and I have the honor of serving as the Commissioner of the New Hampshire Insurance Department. I'm joined this morning here at the table by James Fox, who leads our Property and Casualty Division. First and foremost, I want to thank Senator Abbas for his willingness to collaborate and partner with us on this initiative on behalf of our department. At its core, what this proposal seeks to do is to enhance affordability for homeowners coverage for Granite Staters. But I want to take you through step by step exactly how we've come to the place where we're bringing this proposal before you this morning. So first, I'll start with providing you with a description of the problem, the issue that we're trying to solve. Granite Staters, and I'm sure in your roles you hear this probably fairly frequently, are grappling with the cost of insurance and insurance premiums. And you may hear that as it pertains to a number of their coverages. But in this particular case, we're talking about their homeowners insurance coverage. And when coverages to protect homes becomes unreachable for Granite Staters, it creates a barrier to home ownership. And I know that housing is something that this legislature and the governor have worked hard on and have talked a lot about. And we as a department want to make sure that we are doing our share as part of that overall effort. So as you probably also are aware, when you're getting a home, unless you're paying cash for it, most of the time you're getting a mortgage. And as a condition of that mortgage, the bank is going to require you to have homeowners insurance. It is mandatory in most cases. So that's truly where that barrier to home ownership as it pertains to insurance most prominently arises. And then there are struggles that people are having to maintain their coverage. There are non-renewals and coverage declines that are forcing consumers to more expensive markets, such as the surplus lines market. And meanwhile, Granite Staters, as you know, are struggling with rising costs of living across the board that are putting a real financial strain on them. So as the problem specifically pertains, and the causes of that problem specifically pertains to the insurance market, is presently there is a bit of a hard-ish market out there right now. The hard market is a bit of an insurance technical term. Put simply, it means that the demand for a particular kind of coverage is at traditional levels or higher, but that access to that coverage is more constrained. And so what you have at that point is basic supply-demand dynamics, where what is left of the coverage that is in that high demand is going to be more expensive. And we're seeing this a little bit, although it has gotten a little bit better recently, we're seeing that dynamic play out in the homeowners insurance market. There are a number of reasons why carriers are managing their risk a little bit more conservatively. They're being a little bit tighter in their underwriting. Some of it are things that you're probably well familiar with: inflation, economic pressures, interest rates, social inflation costs. And then there are truly the things that we have no control over, which are the increasing number and the increasing severity of large catastrophic weather events that are putting significant financial pressures on the industry. And so the consequence of all of that, and it's hardly unique to New Hampshire, this is a nationwide and in many respects a global challenge that we're confronting. The consequence is that many New Hampshire residents are really struggling to afford their coverages. As I've mentioned, this is the cause of the problem that we're trying to address here. So we're bringing forward a proposal that we think will help to mitigate some of that pressure and some of that strain for the people of our state. It is inspired by models that have been tried and tested and have proven effective in other states, and we think it is a program that will result in long-term premium stabilization and hopefully to bring down costs. The concept of this is simple. A grant fund will be established. There will be a criteria. You can read it right in the bill itself. So those are the eligible projects that people can undertake in their homes, on their property. Things like if there's an issue with the roof, they can get a grant to assist them financially in being able to address whatever the deficiency or the issue is with the roof, or the foundation, or some other aspect of their home to make that home more resilient. But it also extends to issues that may be on the property itself. And this is a little bit of a unique feature in the program that we're proposing, as opposed to the programs that have been put forward in other states. And it actually comes a bit as a result of a personal experience. So a few years ago, my parents, both retired, fixed incomes, had a very, very large maple tree on their property. It was very, very close to the home. And the tree began to die. And so they started to have issues when they were getting renewed for their homeowners insurance, because the folks who come out to underwrite the property were saying, that tree is a problem. That tree is a new risk on this property. You're going to have to eventually do something about that. And so they immediately got on the phone and started calling the folks who can take down trees. Well, the problem is the tree is huge. And so it's got to be taken down in pieces. You got to get a crane in there. And so something that wouldn't ordinarily strike you as being terribly expensive ended up being close to a $10,000 bill. And again, fixed income. So their favorite son, me, I'm the only son they have, for the record, helped them out with that. But it stuck with me that there are little things that can be done to an individual's property that are going to better position them in the underwriting process, and as a result of that, get them a quote, hopefully with premiums that are going to be affordable. So it is those types of projects that this program foresees being able to assist Granite Staters with. As I mentioned before, this has been a program that has been established and has been tested, and we have an experience from. There are 8 states that currently have the program. There are 5 states plus New Hampshire, so a total of 6 states that currently have proposals for consideration before their legislatures. I will just cite to you a couple of success stories. So Alabama, in Alabama, they have this program. Over 60,000 homes were fortified since they began the program. 8,000 grants were issued as of 2025, this is last year, and they've had great success with the program. Louisiana, North Carolina, same experience. Lower premiums and insurance discounts for proactive homeowners. Oklahoma, they are just going gangbusters with their program. Their experience has been that their disaster-resistant initiatives have led to fewer claims in a culture of preparedness. That's a direct quote from my friends out in Oklahoma. So the next slide you see before you puts in writing a little bit of my description of the program. We have talked to the a team over at the New Hampshire Home Builders Association. They're supportive of this program. And so, as I said, you see there a little bit as to the finer details as to how the program will work. I'm happy to take your questions on that, but I don't want to go on too long. So again, at the end of the day, what we're hoping to see is lower insurance premiums, safer homes. Let's not forget about that policy objective. This is going to offer and open doors of opportunity for people to do things to make their homes safer and more resilient to the types of weather challenges that we face here in New Hampshire, be they microburst, be they flood. We have an occasional hurricane. It's good to know that people will be able to have an opportunity to better protect themselves in the event of those weather events. So finally, I want to get to, I'm sure, the question that's on your mind, which is, okay, so how is this grant fund going to be funded? Well, we appreciated that challenge. And so how we've currently designed the program is there will be no allocation. We understand the budgetary constraints that the state is operating under. We put forward a couple of other ideas as to how we could get a sustainable source of revenue in there. It was met with some resistance from industry. However, I'm also well aware of the conversations that are going on nationally and specifically at the National Association of Insurance Commissioner level around how they can help states to fund these programs. And so the conversations that they are having are with large philanthropic organizations. I like to describe them as the organizations that you hear about right before a PBS documentary. The Robert Woods Jones Foundation, all of those types of foundations, they have really placed a focus recently on these types of initiatives. And the NAIC is working with them to figure out how they can make resources available to the states. My understanding is that those conversations are well on their way and are heading towards something more concrete very soon. But there is also a real discussion going on amongst New England states about how to approach the Federal Home Reserve Bank, I believe is what it's called. They're very interested in investing in these types of programs. I've talked to a lot of nonprofits who are in the environmental space. They've done a lot of work, and now they want to branch out into this area as well. So there are opportunities that we'll be seeking in partnership and in coordination with other organizations to get funding into this program to make it all work. But we understand that certainly at this time, an appropriation or a dedicated revenue source either is just not feasible or it's just not practical, and we understand that. But we want to get this program established so that when those dollars become available, and I do want to stress, when those dollars become available, we have the program in place and we are ready to hit the ground running as soon as we get the dollars to do that. So I'll stop there. James, anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you covered it, Commissioner.
All right, very good. All right, with that, I'm happy to take questions.
All right, are there any questions? Senator Reardon?
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Do you have to be denied insurance to take advantage of this? So
No.
it makes you eligible for insurance?
No, the hope is that people will take these steps before they find themselves in that situation. Because the reality of it is, when you're in a situation where you're going back and forth with your carrier about a non-renewal or a denial, it's probably too late to be able to take the kinds of true substantive steps to correct whatever the issue is in time to avoid any sort of a lapse of your current coverage. So this is something that is looking to be a proactive preventative for people.
Follow up.
Follow up?
Does there have to be any contract with whoever the home insurer is that they acknowledge that this has been done? It like a good driver discount kind of thing?
Sure.
Or anything like that?
So we did not mandate discounts because our conversations with the industry are they are in love with this program. They love this program. They're a big fan of it. And so we didn't see a need to mandate discounts because in practice, it's happening. James, is that fair?
Yeah, I would say some carriers already have a fortified program discount set kind of separate standalone, but also to the extent you're making your home we're fortifying your home and making it safer, that's already also going to be baked into how much you're going to have to pay for your insurance. So it's kind of a two ways it helps the consumer.
One more, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You asserted that this will lower premiums. Are you talking about the universe of homeowners paying for homeowner insurance in the state of New Hampshire? Or are you talking about the group that takes advantage of this program?
Potentially both, but most directly the individual homeowner who's partaking in the program and taking the steps to, again, do something with their home or property that's going to be more favorable to them in the underwriting process. And I will say that lowering the premiums obviously is the goal, but that's done one of two ways. Either at renewal time, when somebody comes out to the property to take a look, to underwrite the property again for renewal. So you hope that you're going to get a nice quote with a premium that's affordable. That's on the one hand. But on the other, it is if there are a lot of real challenges with the home or the property, you've given that individual an opportunity to do just enough to be able to at least get a quote for renewal and not pushed out into the surplus lines market, which, as you know, is typically, in most cases, not all, most cases, significantly more expensive than the admitted market.
And if I may,
You may.
one other technical piece. On page 1, down around line 26, you're talking about manufactured housing on a foundation, and I think it would be helpful, most in the state of New Hampshire are on slabs, not on foundations,
Yes.
that might be a large part of the universe that you're looking at here.
We could take a look at that.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other question? Let me go to Senator McGue
yeah.
and I'll come back. Senator McGue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioner. Thanks
morning.
for coming in. Thanks for bringing a great idea. Just curious, ballpark, how big do you think the fund could get, and any idea of the time frame before folks could have access to it, like
Sure.
before the next microburst?
Sure. When we originally were thinking through concepts and were trying to find some dedicated revenue sources at the state level, we modeled out what we'd be able to do with a $10 million budget. So if the fund had approximately, no, actually that's too high. It was somewhere between $3 and $5 million. And a couple of different features. The first is that any single grant would be capped at $10,000. You're only going to be eligible for that once every 5 years. It would be means tested. So we're really targeting this towards those who really are most in need of that assistance. And so it really depends, Senator, on any given year as to the size of the grant that the individual is looking for. So if somebody really needs a full roof replacement, they're going to need the full $10,000. And they're obviously going to have to contribute themselves to that repair. But if it's a tree along the lines of what I described in my personal circumstance, then you're not hitting the $10,000 cap. You're hitting something lower than that, which obviously makes additional dollars available. My hope is that, and I don't have the models in front of me, but that we're able to help approximately 100 people every year with the funding that we have, and that as time goes on, as these programs become more prominent, more resources will become available, and we can grow the program and obviously have it assist more Granite Staters.
Senator Fett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Commissioner, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Senator.
Take this with a grain of salt. All right. So we're delegating a lot of authority to the insurance commissioner on this bill, it looks like. I mean, you're defining eligibility documentation, you're determining what threatens insurability, you're in control of the contractor and evaluator, credentials. And my fear, though, and this, if I'm reading it wrong, correct me, but it says you're exempt from RSA 91A, if I'm reading that correctly.
I'll let James take a second to find that piece, but I will just say, Senator, hopefully to put you at some ease. It's an interesting, I guess, way the statutes, all of the insurance statutes have been framed, that while the commissioner position is cited specifically, I can assure you that people far smarter than I are making a lot of these decisions and are reviewing a lot of these things. So it's not me personally, it's the department as a whole. And the department over decades and decades has earned a reputation as being true subject matter experts who do very good, careful, quality, thorough work. And so we felt that if we were going to ask you for this opportunity, that we needed to ensure that we were willing to put some skin in the game to make sure that it's going to run well, that it's going to run as intended. And I could not think of a better group of people who would best position us to be able to do that than the team that we have at the department. And as respects to 91A.
You put me at ease, all right? How's that
All
sound?
right, very good.
So there's two sections. There's one section that we actually share with other agencies and we share with the NAIC. That section is also the section of most of the stuff the insurance department does is not subject to, most of what the insurance department does is not subject to 91A requests because it's confidential. And I think the section you're reading is about grant applications, documents, materials related to the project. So that would be on an individual level would be not open to 91A. So you couldn't ask us to give you your neighbor's information. But there's also built into this transparency in terms of how much we get for grant money, where the grant money comes from. That's where I think we focus on the transparency, not on the, and then we held the information coming from the individuals applying to be not something that should be subject to a right to know request.
Can I do one more follow-up?
Yes.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Looking at the liability, it looks like the liability really falls on the homeowners and contractors and evaluators. They all bear the risk. Is that how I'm reading this?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your
Senator,
testimony.
thank you very much. Thank you, committee.
There are two other folks who signed up in support but did not indicate that they'd like to speak. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on Senate Bill 562 but maybe did not sign up? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on 562 and open the hearing on Senate Bill 416 in just a moment. And Senator McHugh, I believe it's you. Yes.
She's just wrapping.
Yep. What's her name again? Yeah,
So we can,
none of these indicated there.
so I don't know. We can. Speakers, but I didn't see. Then if you want to go over there and say, okay, you can speak, you need to.
I'm not sure.
And we need to send it to them.
Oh, we must.
Okay.
I did not see this coming.
Okay.
All right. So I have 3 sheets of names in front of me. A number of you signed in but didn't indicate you wanted to speak. Is that the case? That is the case. Okay. Appreciate the input then. I was going to impose a 3-minute limit, but if the speaking is accurate, we should be just fine. So we will start by welcoming Senator McHugh. Thank you for being here. Please introduce your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Thank you, members of the committee. For the record, my name is State Senator Tim McHugh, representing Senate District 11, the wonderful towns of Merrimack, Amherst, Milford, and Wilton, home of many, many great restaurants. You should all come and visit. They're delicious. And this is a delicious bill, making it much easier to do business as a restaurant owner, as I'm sure you'll hear from many of the folks who are kind enough to show up behind me. The issues addressed in this bill were brought forward to me by a huge part of New Hampshire's economy, about a $4 or $5 billion part of the state's economy, encompassing about 3,400 establishments, employing about 9,000 or so tipped employees, and supporting a total of about 68,000 total jobs in this industry. Under current New Hampshire law, the tip-related rules are pretty ambiguous and open to changing interpretation by the Department of Labor. And most importantly, they don't align with federal tip rules. Restaurant owners have to navigate these overlapping definitions and the state-specific requirements that differ from federal standards. So there can often be some confusion and the risk of unintentional noncompliance, especially for the small, locally owned and operated establishments. So federal tipping law, by contrast, is a bit simpler and has a little more clear and consistent framework. For employees, they can encounter a different policy from shift to shift and day to day. So the restaurant industry came to me and asked if I would be interested in helping them simplify this process for both business owners and for employees. And that's what this bill does. It simply aligns what has become a lengthy and often confusing statute in New Hampshire law with federal law, and hopefully makes it easier for everyone. I'm sure you'll hear some very practical examples of how it will do just that from the industry members behind me. As you see, it's quite a popular issue. And I thank them for showing up to tell you their stories. And I thank my co-sponsors as well. And with that, I'll leave it to some of the experts and the impacted individuals behind us.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that very much. The Department of Labor would like to speak on this particular bill. John Garrigan. Good morning, sir.
Thank you all. My name is John Garrigan. I am General Counsel at the Department of Labor. The department has reviewed this bill. We are neutral on it. We don't take positions on legislation. Our understanding and interpretation of this bill is that were it to pass, tip pooling and tip sharing and the issues that arise from those would now fall exclusively under federal jurisdiction of the United States Department of Labor, no longer in the jurisdiction of the New Hampshire Department of Labor. There are parts of labor law where that does happen. Overtime pay is actually one of them. Our reading of the proposed language would still, however, allow the department to engage in wage adjustments or for employees to file wage claims for any sort of direct tips, ones that aren't pooled, ones that aren't shared, if there's any sort of allegation that those were provided or paid correctly. Senator McHugh is correct. There is a big discrepancy between federal law in this regard and state law. The department works as hard as we can to engage with employers and restaurants and event spaces to educate them about those differences. And we do our best to work with them to come up with plans where they can succeed. But we do recognize that there is a tremendous amount of difficulty to comply with both laws and the differences between them. So like I said, we take no position on this. We can enforce it as written. I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Senator Fred?
Thank you. Thank you for taking the question. So this bill defers to federal law now and then forever, correct?
Until the law would be changed, yes.
Okay, so follow up.
Yes.
So what if federal protections get weaker? We are still now bound by that federal law, correct? And we have no ability to come back unless we pass another piece of legislation.
Correct. Yeah, the federal government and federal Congress would have the ability to change those laws without input from the New Hampshire legislature.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Mr. Summers, the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Mike Summers, President and CEO of the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association. We represent a little over 1,300 restaurants, hotels, and other hospitality businesses all over the state. We thank Senator McHugh for bringing this bill forward. This has been an enormous issue for our industry for many, many years. Obviously here in support of Senate Bill 416, and want to recognize all the folks behind me with the green stickers that are here in support as well. So since the current tipping law was adopted in 2007, it has been all but impossible for our small businesses to fully comply with the standard. The vague notion of coercion has created countless violation and penalties imposed on business owners trying to do the right thing. As a result, we've tried to make changes to this law over the my 15, 16 years here at the association. We've tried 4 different times. One of those times it was sent to interim study. The other 3 times we made these little tweaky changes around the edges of the statute, but frankly, it hasn't made any difference. It is still the same problem, and because it really comes down to 2 concepts. The one being the coercion piece of it, and then the second being the voluntary. And so the coercion piece is really problematic because depending on who is working at the Department of Labor today, or versus 5 years ago, we get two different interpretations of what that means. And so, many businesses that we have worked with, and that you'll hear some examples in subsequent testimony, have legitimately retained counsel. They've worked with the Department of Labor, received approval in writing to have a policy and procedure in place, and are now receiving letters saying that, yeah, you're not in compliance and you have to change what you're doing. So this is just the maddening process that these businesses have struggled with for years and years and years. And then kind of give some backstory on how we got to this approach to this fix that is before you today. We had actually worked with stakeholders, with attorneys. We tried to come up with some language to kind of fix what was in the existing statute, but frankly, when we offered it to the Department of Labor for feedback, they said that we were actually making it worse than it was currently. So really, it doesn't seem to be a way to fix what is in statute today. So that is why we really have moved to this concept of just deferring to the federal standard. That FLSA standard has been around since 1938 and has been little changed since then. So clearly this standard works. It works in the 47 other states that default to it. So I think that this is a standard that probably makes the most sense for New Hampshire and for small New Hampshire businesses. So, one last highlight is that in all my years working here, this issue has been on the top 10 labor violations for the New Hampshire Department of Labor every year that I've been here. So clearly this is a huge problem for businesses. We can't figure out how to comply with it. And frankly, we just urge you to support Senate Bill 416 and let's fix this problem once and for all, please.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Amy LaBelle, please join us. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Amy LaBelle. I'm the owner of LaBelle Winery in Amherst and Derry, and I'm here in support of Senate Bill 416. The overall highlight, as you just heard, is that this bill is impossible for us to comply with. Try as we might. There are many good employers in this state, many good hospitality businesses who want to comply. So it's not that the violations that are being issued are for lack of trying. This bill is actually impossible to comply with as it is written and needs to be changed. When participation in a tip pool or tip share is voluntary, it's really the voluntary and the coercive pieces that are problematic. It can change from moment to moment. So it requires as currently written, requires a staff meeting prior to each event, perhaps. Say you're an event venue. In advance of each event, you're required to have a staff meeting with no manager present where employees can determine how they'd like to be tipped for that event and how they'd like to share that tip pool. And I'll share with you in just a moment how that impacts in operation. Because it's one thing to write a law on paper, but when you have to put it into practice, it's entirely different. The other problem with the voluntary piece is that even if it's decided prior to an event, say, the employees can change their mind in the voluntary standard during the event, further complicating the assessment of how to apply this law. It's also impossible for businesses to comply with the coercion standard in the law. Depending on the New Hampshire Department of Labor's interpretation in the moment, which does change from administration to administration, if we have a recommended written policy that was approved and adopted by our staff, we're still in violation of the law, depending on who's interpreting it at the time. And while the current administration of the DOL has been lovely and helpful, and they try to, help guide us, they're open to discussion, which is very, very welcome and very appropriate. The challenge for our industry is that as administrations change, the interpretation changes. So in my case, for example, in 2020, we went to the Department of Labor under Michelle Small's direction, and she gave us written interpretation through our legal team. And we spent a lot of money to do that, because we're trying to comply with this law the best we can. Out of that came a series of operational challenges, but things we nevertheless implemented, which are a written policy that our employees, as they come on to work at LaBelle, sign on to, that they agree to, and that we disperse. We disperse tips on the event side, which is what's in question right now for us, based on pure math. It's a very straightforward standard. You know, you work the event for a certain number of hours, you get a certain number of tips allocated to you. Straight math, easy for our employees to understand and easy for our financial team to administer consistently. However, the current administration at the Department of Labor has interpreted that to not be an okay standard, even though in 2020, we went through the expense and trouble to get a written opinion by Michelle Small, who also consulted with the federal DOL to give us this joint decision on how we were administering things, and they blessed it. But now, 5 years later, I'm finding myself under an action notice from the Department of Labor that is about to impose fines on me and cause me to change the way we do this law, comply with this law again. Now, you may think that this law protects employees in this regard, but it doesn't, because now my employees who have signed on to and been operating under our policy for all of these years are going to be subject to disruption and upheaval in the way that they're paid. And we're going to have to figure out how to comply with the new interpretation of the administrative rules. This causes a lot of confusion and a lot of problems on the side of the employer. It would literally require me to, for example, take a really busy day at LaBelle, where I might have 6 events across the property, 3 in one property, 3 in another. 6 possible different interpretations, and groups of employees can sit down before these events, during which no manager could be present. So they'd have a meeting before an event. They would decide how they'd like to be tip pooling and sharing. Well, today I think the bartenders should get more than the servers. Instead of all just working as a team and getting straight math distributions, they can decide, right? So in practice, they would sit down, have this meeting, and then determine how they'd like to do it. They'd write it up, say, we'd like to tip pool this way today. And that would somehow make it to my financial office. I've got 250 employees. And so say there's 6 events on that Saturday, 6 different possible interpretations of how that tip pool should be administered will go to my financial accounting team. They then have to unravel that all on Monday morning and figure out, okay, how are we mathing this one? How are we mathing this one? And the opportunity for error in that is incredible. But it's also so much uncertainty for the people working at LaBelle. So in that way, it's tough on employees, in my view. You may say, oh, well, for events, why don't you just pay them more and put them on a service tip, right? So don't do the tipped wage anymore. Just let them get paid on a higher hourly rate, and you keep the service charge, because that's allowed under the law, right? But that also is going to cause my employees to make less money per hour, because they do very well under the tip arrangement that we have now. So that would be less per hour. It would cause me to lose employees immediately. And in this kind of environment, we certainly don't want to have that problem. It's hard enough to get employees these days, right? So the state standard, the real problem here, the heart of the problem, is that the state standard is different than the federal standard. It's very frustrating for businesses to try to figure out and to try to follow, even if we want to. We can't. And one policy to comply with is always going to be preferred. The language in the statute currently makes it impossible to comply. And so I urge this committee to support Senate Bill 416 and let us default to the federal standard under the FLSA. I'm happy to take any questions and help you understand a little bit more about how the operations work on this for us.
Thank you. Questions? Senator McHugh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for taking my question and for sharing your story. Right at the beginning, you said the bill was impossible to enforce.
The law.
Okay,
Sorry.
I was 99% sure that that's what you meant.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank
The
you so
law
much
is
for supporting.
impossible to
Thank
comply
you.
with as
Thank
written.
you so much.
Let's do it at the end. Okay. All right, any other questions? Thank you, Ms. LaBelle.
Thank you for your time.
All right, Jim Reedy from Shaheen Finney is here. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you so much. My name is Jim Reedy. I'm a lawyer at Sheehan Finney. I'm a partner, and I'm the chair of the firm's labor and employment group. I've been practicing as a management side lawyer for over 36 years, and I can say that listening to Ms. LaBelle's testimony, that's exactly what I hear from clients in the hospitality space. The great challenges associated with this law. I've dealt with this tip pooling, chip sharing law in New Hampshire and the many challenges and different interpretations for several years. And it is exactly as Ms. LaBelle and Mr. Summers described it. It is confusing. It is the subject of disputes, and it also causes acrimony among the team members because not all tips are shared. It's a percentage of the tips that are shared, but the way in which the system is set up, as Ms. LaBelle said, it gets to be confusing and employees can opt in or opt out on a daily basis. And how can you run a business like that? And current law doesn't fit all situations, as Ms. LaBelle described. And if other folks in the gallery could also describe their particular situations as well. Many of our state laws, and I applaud them, and I'm an expat from Massachusetts, so I appreciate being here in New Hampshire and the way in which we have common sense approach to the laws, but this law is not one of those. New Hampshire, as Mr. Summers said, is only one of 3 states that has an opt-in, opt-out system. More than 45 states follow the federal government, and that is a better approach. And if the example of the other 2 states are Minnesota and Kentucky, as I recall. But they have the same problems with the interpretation and enforcement of their statutes. The FLSA, the Fair Labor Standards Act, the federal wage and hour law, by way of comparison, actually provides some clarity. And there was a question earlier about the change to the FLSA. As Mr. Summers said, it's been adopted in 1938. There have been very few changes to the FLSA in that period of time. In fact, most recently, you may have heard about the proposed changes to the overtime laws, and those have generally failed. So the protections in place for tipped employees under the federal scheme, and by the way, I have a lot of experience dealing with employers under the federal scheme as well, dealing with the U.S. Department of Labor. Employers cannot share any part of the tips at all. You've heard about, there was a case here in New Hampshire just a few years ago of restaurant owners sharing tips or some of their managers and supervisors, not permitted under federal law. Managers and supervisors are defined under federal law, so there's no question as to who can share and who cannot participate in the system. A tip credit, and I know Senator Innes, you know this, that there, and I think Senator Murphy as well, the tip credit can be taken as a sub-minimum wage as long as the tips are over a certain amount that exceeds minimum wage. When the employer doesn't take the tip credit, there are certain procedures in place as to whether or not you can have a tip pool or tip share. Tip pool or tip share, by the way, just to define them, is tip pooling is among similarly situated employees. Tip share is for tipped employees sharing with non-tipped employees, front of the house typically, sometimes back of the house. But the federal government, again, has a system of required notices to employees as to their mandatory tip pool at the time of hire. It's posted, it's an onboarding, and for purposes of what the percentage is that will be required to participate in the pool or the share. And it requires that record keeping. If that record keeping is not accurate, there are fines under federal law. And finally, employees must be paid on a timely basis for those tips. They can't be delayed. They must be paid on the next regular payroll. So there's a real structure there, and you avoid some of the problems with the current system of confusion, dispute, and a lack of clarity. Aligning with, as Mr. Garrigan said, aligning with federal law makes perfect sense, and there is precedent in that regard, not only for overtime under New Hampshire law, but our minimum wage follows the federal and also the overtime exemptions for the ski areas and seasonal business and so on. So there is precedent in that regard. And from my experience dealing with the New Hampshire Department of Labor, when you're dealing with issues where they default to the feds, that is true. It makes it a lot easier. But as Mr. Garrigan said, there is still protection under New Hampshire law if employees are not paid the amount that they're due. You could have both enforcement under federal and state. So I am here, of course, as a management side lawyer with experience in this area in support of this bill. And it would really, truly eliminate confusion and replace it with clear structure for the advantage not only of the employees, but the employers.
All right. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Reverend Dr. Gail Kinney, please join us. Good morning.
Good morning. So, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear before you today. I really appreciate all of your efforts in serving the state of New Hampshire. For the record, my name is Gail Kinney. I am a pastor with the United Church of Christ. The United Church of Christ, some folks know it as know the group as the Congregationalists, is the largest Protestant denomination in the state of New Hampshire, with 129 congregations in all corners of the state. So I am representing the Economic Justice Ministry of the New Hampshire Conference, UCC. This particular bill raised tremendous concerns for our group and for our denomination. And I want to say first, this is a very significant part of the New Hampshire economy, the folks who employ traditionally tipped workers. And we value that part, that industry or those industries across the state tremendously. And we heard about that this is a significant industry with a number of employers, and also for every employer, even more significant numbers of employees. And I would implore you, prior to acting on this bill, to try to dig into a little bit where it came from and why it was important in New Hampshire. If you just look at the sources in the RSAs, it references 2007, 2012, 2017, and then 2023. So obviously this bill was, or this RSA was looked at most recently in 2023. And if over multiple years there has not been a decision to change the law, I think that says something, despite, powerful efforts trying to bring about a change. I would say that the federal statute, Fair Labor Standards Act, makes clear some things about the opportunities for tip pooling and tip sharing. What New Hampshire law does is add some additional protections for the workers who work in that industry. And I think it's really important to hear from the workers and to let the workers know that this bill is even before you, before making a final decision on this particular proposal. U.S. Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division has said very clearly, Fair Labor Standards Act sets certain standards, and then states can enhance those standards if they wish. And so U.S. DOL says very specifically, when state law differs, added protections from the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, an employer must comply with the standard that's most protective of employees. And so clearly, in its wisdom, past members of the House and Senate in New Hampshire determined that it was important to add some additional protections for employees, that vast number of very, very valuable employees in the state of New Hampshire who operate not just on wages, but also on tips. The law that you're trying to, or is being proposed to just do away with altogether, says tips are wages and shall be the property of the employee receiving the tip. And I think that all of us, or most of us, when we give a tip to an employee, we believe that that tip is going to the employee and not spread out among a number of people. So it says that shall be the property of the employee receiving the tip and shall be retained by the employee unless the employee voluntarily and without coercion from his or her employer agrees to participate in a tip pooling or tip sharing arrangement. The next section of the law says no employer is precluded from administering a valid tip pooling or tip sharing arrangement, including suggesting reasonable and customary practices. So the employer can determine what its reasonable and customary practices are, share them with the employee so the employee knows full well, but the employee has the option of voluntarily and without any coercion agreeing to a tip pooling arrangement. Some employees like tip pooling or agree to it, and others don't. This, again, in its wisdom, the New Hampshire legislature has said that it's very important for you folks that the valuable employees in the tipped industries have that right. I would just again implore you, don't take away that right without hearing from some of the workers who will be impacted by what happens here and about what you do. So with that, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, appreciate it. Tina Kelly would like to speak. Good morning, Ms. Kelly.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my
Sure.
testimony today. As you said, my name is Tina Kelly. I'm currently a waitress part-time. I waitress Saturdays and Sundays. I work an office job during the week. I've waitressed and bartended most of my adult life, probably about 40 years. I realized early on that I love waitressing. And I realized early on that I could not sustain my family simply by waitressing. I couldn't get insurance. There was a lot of things, pensions, all of that was outside of what I could not do. So I went out, I got a regular full-time job. I have a family most of my life as a single mom, and waitressing was able to afford me to be able to make enough money to give my kids the things that other people had. I'm speaking today in opposition to Senate Bill 416. The revisions to RSA 279:26-B points to federal law. I don't believe this is up front to just point to federal law. It's very difficult. I'm used to looking at laws and rules, but I had a difficult time finding these laws to find out what was exactly going on. And I found 153.50 and 531.54 of the Fair Labor Standards Act, but I could not find 531.42. So I don't know where that is. I couldn't find it. Just shows you that it's difficult. Changes of the law should have been put in New Hampshire and been straightforward so that the average everyday person working in this industry can see it, find it, and understand it. Contrary to belief, federal law is not the easiest laws to interpret. I read it over and over and over again and could come up with different interpretations in my mind or questions that I had. With that, I agree with change. We work hard for our tips, and we receive and develop skills in this chosen profession. The tips I earn are based on my skills and the amount of care I show to each one of my customers. They tip me based on my service that I provide, and give my employer control over my tips is unfair. We deal with politics within the workplace, as everybody knows, on a daily basis. And this will put every waitress and waiter at a further disadvantage within the working environment. We currently deal with managers and supervisors that bring in family members, friends, in a lot of those cases, they're given preferential treatment. And to allow your employer to distribute your tips in the way they see fit, there's real potential for unfair advantage taken there. We deal with bussers, very good bussers, very good bartenders. And right now I wait tables, so you understand where I'm coming from. We deal with very good bussers and very good bartenders, but there are those bussers and bartenders that don't provide the service. I tip them based on the service that they provide me, just like my customers tip me based on the service I provide them. We do tip out our bartender and our busser. New Hampshire yearly wages for wait staff is somewhere between 12.2 thousand and 57.4 thousand. Only approximately 1% earn at that higher rate. The majority of wait staff working full-time earn between 34 and 42,000 a year. That's not really a lot of money. And the federal minimum wage is only $7.25, which is what we hold to. And part of this bill, it says that, and this is for the tip credit, which your employer can choose to do. And if they choose to pay you at that $7.25 an hour. The federal law says an employer that pays its tipped employees the full minimum wage and does not take a tip credit may impose a tip pooling arrangement that includes dishwashers, cooks, and other employees in the establishment. That is unfair. That gives your employer the ability to balance their employee salaries off of the backs of the wait staff who are already working very hard. It's hard on your feet. It's hard on your body to do this. And if you don't work, you don't get paid. I currently work a part-time job during the day and I waitress on the weekends. So right now, I took time off from work. I'm not getting paid to be here, but I think this is important enough to my fellow wait staff and citizens of this state to be here to speak against this bill. I mean, I fully understand what they're talking about with big venues when you have, and I've done this. I worked at Meadowbrook, and I've been in a line of bartenders where you have 5 or 6 bartenders in a row bartending. And so I perfectly get that and we tip pooled. We did. We as employees decided to tip pool. We didn't change our minds during the night. We didn't do any of that. If that happens, that is unfair. So maybe there's a way to fix New Hampshire's law to accommodate for some of that, but to go straight to a federal law, that is unfair to us who are waitressing, working very hard, have developed our skills and are working against new employees that no matter what, you know, they may be very lovely people, but they're not going to be as skilled as some. And I'm not as skilled as some. I have a waitress that I work with that I would love to have her personality with the customers, and she makes accordingly. I wouldn't want to take her tips. She works hard for those tips. So I would implore you to vote this inexpedient to legislate, or at the very least, send it to committee and work on it. Don't point to federal, put it in our New Hampshire law so it's easy to understand and fair for all the citizens of the state of New Hampshire.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? I'm going to start with the first one. Let's say that on the way home tonight, because we're going to be here late, I decide to stop off at Country Spirit in Henniker and grab some takeout. I'm going to pick that up either at the bar or at the wait staff stand, and I'm going to leave a tip. Where's that tip go? Does it go to the person at the wait stand, the bartender? Who provided the actual service and deserves the tip in this case?
In my mind, that would be the person that took your order.
Okay, thank you. Senator Murphy.
Where you work as a server, how many people are you on the floor with on a Saturday night?
I don't work Saturday nights. I work Saturdays. And I can tell you where I'm working right now. I work at Gunstock Ski Area, and I work Saturdays and Sundays. And there are 2 restaurants. There's a bar upstairs. But I work in the Powder Keg restaurant, and on any given shift, there are 4 wait staff, 2 bartenders, sometimes a busser.
Follow-up is, what happens if your employer hires someone to wait tables and that person shows up and says, works the shift, takes the money and says, I'm not going to tip out the bartender. Just refuse to do it, not going to do it.
So, and I'm sure that, I know that does happen here and there, not as a rule, but it does happen. And my thing is that employer has every right, and they do it now, to schedule you however they want. They don't necessarily have to schedule you in the best, they don't even have to schedule you.
But one more question.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sorry, this isn't even a question, but you do understand that that's coercion under the law, and that's technically illegal, which is what the bill is trying to address.
Okay, and maybe you need to define what coercion is, or perhaps, you know what I mean, make a good definition of what coercion is. But they do it already. I mean, they do it. They will schedule you if you don't agree with them, they'll schedule you a bad shift.
All right. Senator McGeough, quickly, please.
Thank you so much for coming and bringing your testimony and telling your personal story. It's important that we have both perspectives. So my question is, Super Bowl's coming up. I'm guessing that the pizza places in, say, Manchester or anywhere are going to be pretty busy. And the folks answering the phones are going to be racing to the phones, taking a lot of orders. People will show up and pick up their pizzas, face that iPad, pick a tip amount.
Yeah.
Who should get that tip? That person who's cashing them out, or the guys out back who are just working like dogs all through the Super Bowl before at halftime, or should they each get a piece of that?
I believe it should be the front of the house. I think that you're paying your, and I know that wages for cooks have gone up anywhere, what I've seen, I'm not an expert, okay? $18 to $20, maybe even more for a just general cook. But I do believe it's the front of the house.
So just to clarify, that follow up, if I may. So just to clarify, the guys, the prep guys that came in at 4 a.m. or whenever they have to come in and make the dough and the sauce and do the mise en place or get it sorted out, get the station sorted out, don't get a piece of that because their wages are higher, and the folks at the front iPad answering the phone, racing to answer the phone because they know they get every bit of that iPad tip. They keep it all. You believe that's the best policy.
And I agree with you. That is a very difficult situation to look at and to figure out. But in those aren't, and maybe there needs to be a way to figure that out and put it into law, what can happen in those situations. But to punish us all because you've got a pizza place, which is different than a restaurant where you're waiting on tables, it's different. It's a different dynamic.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much for your hearing me out today.
Of course. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on Senate Bill 416 who maybe didn't sign up? There's one more. Please join us. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Mary MacDonald. I'm here today because I have moved to New Hampshire in 2000 and have spent 25 years in the hospitality industry here in the state. I wanted to talk because I spent many of those years in a management position, but I also spent many in bartending, waitressing. And I have a couple examples I would like to present of how this tip pooling process is problematic. First of all, when I moved here, I became a bartender at the Bank of New Hampshire Pavilion, previously Meadowbrook. Spent 8 years as a bartender there. Tina Kelly and I worked together. Every single time we worked together, we pooled. We were a great team. We pooled. It was harmonious. It was fun. Within year eight, I became the bar manager for a new company. I moved from bar manager to operations manager to assistant general manager to general manager. In that 18 years I was Bank of New Hampshire Pavilion, every time a new company took over food and beverage, they kept me on. The Department of Labor would come in because it was a new company and they would want to look at our hiring practices, our policies, et cetera. And for 18 years, those three occasions when I met with the Department of Labor, I said to them, we have a pooling process. We pool here, everybody pools. And because if you've ever been at the Bank of New Hampshire, you could be at a bar that has 5 bartenders, you could be at a bar that has 15 bartenders. And on all those occasions when we met with the Department of Labor, I was very clear that we pull tips, and I had never once received any complaints from anybody. It was not coercive. We did, during the interview process, say, you know, if you're at a bar by yourself, do your tips. If you're at a bar with 5 other bartenders, we pool. And there were occasions when you'd have somebody who come in an hour or two later and the team would decide, well, let's take the total tip divided by the number of hours. You worked 8, you worked 8, you worked 6. You get that based on how many hours you worked. It worked harmoniously. It was wonderful. In 2008, end of 18 season at Meadowbrook, I retired. 18 a new company took over. 19, the Department of Labor, no, 21, the Department of Labor showed up because Coffers were empty, Department of Labor showed up. They got hit with tens of thousands of dollars in fines for doing what the venue had done for 20 years. I went back in 21 as a bartender, which is where I started because it was fun. I loved the people. It was a great environment. And I'm going to just give you two really quick examples of what I personally experienced because of the new tip pooling policy. Now, when we go in, we all have to meet as a team, agree whether we're going to pool or not, fill out a form. And you have 250 employees. That payroll people are pulling their hair out, which is one thing. But I had an occasion where a young lady was working with me, told me she was pooling. We're working like bees because we're so busy. Now, I know where everything is. I'm running out of liquor. I'm running out of ice. I say to the girl working next to me, I know she's pooling. We all agreed. There were 12 of us, or 8 of us. We're all going to pool. So I'm like, I'm going to go get ice. I'm going to go get whatever. And I'm restocking and restocking. Or in the same evening, multiple times, I'm making a drink. She doesn't have a customer. She says, oh, I'll ring those drinks for you. I've done this for 20 years. Well, what this young lady did is at the end of the night, she sends an email and says, I changed my mind. I don't want to pool. Well, here's the problem. She did no restocking. She took a lion's share of the customers. When I was making the drinks, she was ringing them in her register. So here's the problem. At the end of the night, the management would say to your team made X here, and they would write it on a piece of paper because it was nobody else's business. They would hand you the piece of paper. This is what you collectively made. And we would sit and we would calculate our tips because by law, we have the right to know what our tips are before we leave for the end of the night. Well, when our check comes out, it's different. And then we find out that 1 or 2 of them notified the employer after the fact that they didn't want to pool. So that affects all of us. I also had another occasion, and I'm just going to give you 2 because I could give you 10. Another location, because I've been with the venue for so many years, I'm a really fast bartender. I'm put in a location that I'm in the back making cocktails, specialty cocktails, and I'm putting them on a table. In front of me are 2 women that have first season. We're like 3 or 4 concerts in, their very first year. They decide at the end of the night that they're not going to pool. So I made drinks. They each made $500 each. I made $7.50 an hour. I made every single drink. And because they were in the front just bringing the drinks in that I made, they each made $500. I made $7.50 an hour. I went to my management and I said, I will not work with these 2 women anymore if you're going to allow them to make these changes. Well, they spoke to them, but there's a limit to how much they're willing to do because they're fearful that somebody's going to go to the labor board and complain, and then it's going to be considered retaliation or coercion. So the morale at that venue in the last 3 years since they got hit with these fines because management is forcing all of this upon us, morale has gone down the hill. I'm one of probably 20 seasoned staff people that have been there for many years that because the morale is so low have left the venue. It has become cutthroat. You have people who come in, show up early, show up at the best spot, refuse to shut down when they're told to because they're not pooling. So I think that I'm in 100% support of this, and I hope that if you add a minimum, like Tina said, bring it to committee. Tina and I fix it for you in a day, I'm telling you. But it does not work right now. And the fact that this venue got charged tens of thousands for fines for what the Department of Labor knew we had been doing, because I personally had told them many times over the years, to me is appalling. And we all knew that there was a fine because all the policies changed. And 250 employees, 90% of us were happy with the system. It worked well. And our belief was it was Department of Labor way of refilling their coffers after COVID.
All right. Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. No questions, I don't think. So thank you.
Very good,
Appreciate
thank you.
it. All right. With that, I'm going to close the hearing on Senate Bill 416, and I would entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Let's take a look at 416. Do we have discussion on it?
I'll move out to
And/or a
pass.
motion?
I'll move out to pass, Mr.
We have a
Chairman.
motion about to pass.
I will second that,
Okay.
but want to note, whoever it was that did read 29 CFR sections, they are correct. There is no 42. I think it should be 52.
52?
Yeah.
So do we need a committee amendment on that? Yes. Okay, so let's go to that line. This is line 6, correct? We do. Sir, would you join us? Mr. Reedy?
He can have my computer if he wants.
Okay. Drafting error.
Senator Reardon, I'm sorry, your question was?
The bill cites a 531.42, and there is none. Do you want the statute in front of you?
Mr. Chairman, it is 52. It's a typo. Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
It is 52. That's a typo.
It is 52?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
It is.
typo.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So with that, we can do a committee amendment and change line 6, where it reads section 531.42 to 531.52. So we'll make that committee amendment. All right. Yes, Senator Reardon moved it. I believe I will second it. All right. So all in favor of the committee amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have a motion about to pass on the bill with a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Do we have a motion for consent?
So moved.
And a second for me. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, Senator McHugh, would you take this one out? Should it be necessary? And I'll take a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We are out of executive session. We will begin the hearing on Senate Bill 487 as soon as Senator Murphy takes the gavel.
She told me something totally different than I asked her about. Yeah.
Aaron, you ready? Call to order the hearing on Senate Bill 487. Recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Innes. Welcome.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the committee. I'm Senator Dan Innes, representing District 7, beautiful Bradford, New Hampshire. And I'm here to introduce to you Senate Bill 487. And this comes at the request of the Cooperative Credit Union Association and New Hampshire Credit Unions. Last year, I filed pretty much the same bill, Senate Bill 25, which passed the Senate. Unfortunately, it died after an unrelated amendment was attached to it by the House of Representatives. If passed, New Hampshire would join 16 other states that allow the membership of state-chartered credit unions to vote to allow compensation of their board members. And I would note that the banking industry has such a situation where bank board members are compensated for their work. And I must add that the job of a credit union board member continues to require more work and higher levels of expertise to ensure compliance and good governance. Compensating board members for their time, as we do bank board members, and for their expertise has been proven to attract quality candidates to join these boards. The bill is only enabling legislation. Nothing would force a credit union to compensate their board members. I know there are members of the industry here to testify, at least one, but I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions of Senator Innes? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Emilia Golderi, Commissioner, Banking Department. Welcome to Senate Commerce.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Amelia Galderian, and I am the bank commissioner for the state of New Hampshire. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on SB 487. As Senator Innes noted, this bill was drafted at the request of the Credit Union Association, not the request of the banking department. However, I'm here to testify. We're neutral on the underlying policy of the bill, but really just here to answer any questions you may have because it is amending banking department laws. Just for background information, approximately 20 other states, give or take, they all have a little different models, permit credit union board member compensation currently. Federally chartered credit unions are permitted to compensate only one board member under federal law, so it's a little different than this. So I think with all of that in mind, this at least makes us on par with those other states that allow some form of this, perhaps gives us a slight competitive advantage over federally chartered credit unions to the extent credit unions sometimes leave my jurisdiction and move to federal charter. This perhaps would be one small piece that might keep a credit union here. I don't know if it would be the deal breaker, but it doesn't hurt. So just happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Chair recognizes Ms. Jessica Avery and Mr. McKnight. Welcome. Yeah, that's fine. You put me on? Okay. Good morning. As president of Triangle Credit Union, a state chartered credit union headquartered in Nashua, New Hampshire, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of Senate Bill 487, which allows credit unions to have board compensation. Expectations for the credit union board members have grown considerably over the years. They have, bear increased responsibility to ensure regulatory compliance, maintaining governance standards, and upholding fiduciary duties in the environment, the changing environment. Compensating the board members has proven an effective, attractive, quality candidates to ensure the roles align with the roles demand. Compensation serves both as an incentive and a mechanism to increase accountability. With financial responsibility and the expectation of higher performance in fostering more engagement and responsibility governments. Talking a little bit about my shop, and I don't think that Triangle Credit Union is unique in the industry. My board meets 11 times a year, which doesn't really seem that much. But when you add all the committee meetings that we have, you're adding 37 additional meetings, whether we meet on a monthly or a quarterly basis. That's pretty tough on board members, especially if they have families or if they have to find a babysitter, you know, to be able to attend. So again, you know, the board meetings themselves last between 2.5 hours, and the committees meet anywhere between an hour and an hour and a half. Some of the committees is the finance, information technology, policy, HR, nominating, pension, and additional ad hoc committees as needed. So it's very time consuming. So this bill will allow us to compensate for all the time that they're serving. I encourage you to support the legislation, which will modernize New Hampshire credit union framework and help ensure a long-term success and stability in our state chartered institutions. By allowing the credit union to opt in to compensating their boards, we can attract skilled professionals and improve governance. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Good morning, Chair Innes and members of the committee. I am Jessica Avery, the Director of Advocacy for the Cooperative Credit Union Association. New Hampshire's credit unions play an essential role in the lives of over 820,000 New Hampshire residents as our members, and they contribute significantly to the state's economy with a most recent economic impact of $1.9 billion. Just recently, New Hampshire credit unions also announced that they raised over $4 million through their decades-long partnership with Make-A-Wish New Hampshire. Today, I testify in support of Senate Bill 487 that would allow state-chartered credit unions in New Hampshire to compensate their board members. This bill was unanimously passed last session in both the House and Senate, demonstrating the positive impact of this bill. It is important, again, to emphasize that this legislation is only enabling. It does not mandate compensation for board members. Instead, it empowers credit unions to decide for themselves through a democratic member vote, not a board vote. This approach respects the cooperative structure of credit unions while ensuring decisions are democratically made and in the best interest of members. Providing fair compensation ensures that credit unions can attract and retain talented leaders who can navigate the complexities of today's financial landscape in an increasingly competitive professional climate. In conclusion, I respectfully ask that you consider supporting this legislation to allow state-chartered credit unions to compensate board members to strengthen their governance. And I welcome any questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on Senate Bill 487 that is not signed up? Seeing none, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 487. In 30 seconds, we'll take up Senate Bill 525. Yes.
I'm trying to get us back on time, but I can't quite get there.
It's a long haul.
All right.
Open the hearing on Senate Bill 525. Recognize the prime sponsor, Senator Innes.
All right. Good morning again, Mr. Vice Chair and committee members. I'm Dan Innes from Bradford, New Hampshire, representing District 7, and I'm here to introduce Senate Bill 525. A little bit of background. The Business Finance Authority, known affectionately as the BFA, is a self-funding agency established by the legislature in 1992. Since that time, they've helped 6,000 New Hampshire companies start, grow, and thrive in our state. There are several tools that are used by the BFA, including the ability to partner with major employers to build high-impact projects around the state. Some examples include a couple of manufacturing facilities with Sig Sauer that support the needs of our troops and international allies, recruiting BAE Systems to Manchester, bringing New Balance to New Hampshire, and expanding Green Source Well and Engineering in Charleston. Each of these projects involve BFA partnerships with the private sector on real estate development that has added thousands of new jobs and created a significant tax base in our state. These are not subsidies. It doesn't cost the state a dime. Currently, there's a statutory limit that caps the BFA's ability to do these highly successful projects. The limit is not indexed to inflation, and historically, the BFA comes to the legislature every now and again to increase this limit, and they've always appreciated our support in this regard. This bill does just that. To reiterate, the limit does not allocate capital to the BFA. It doesn't impact our state budget in any way. And the state of New Hampshire has never funded BFA's operations or projects. This limit, which is known as the contingent credit limit, is the limit on the total BFA state of New Hampshire guarantees that can be in place at any given time. State has never had to pay out any on BFA's guarantees, any money. This tool is used very effectively, and it goes through a series of public hearings. The BFA board must approve. The governor and the executive council also approve each time a project is embarked upon. So as New Hampshire's become even more successful in recruiting companies into our state, and since building manufacturing facilities cost just a bit more than it did in 1992, BFA's cap is running out a bit faster each time it's raised. This cap needs to be raised again for the state to have a credible chance at recruiting that next level size of employer that have begun to show interest in the granite state. Importantly, State Treasurer, who's on the board of the BFA, has indicated there's no problem with raising the limit as it would have no impact on our bond rating. So thank you for taking the time to hear my testimony. I'm happy to try to answer any questions, and I trust there are some folks behind me who will testify as well. Is that correct, Mr. Vice Chair?
Actually, no, Senator Ennis, you were the only one signed up to speak as of, there is.
You certainly can do that.
There's one gentleman behind you madly scrambling for the pen.
All right.
Are there questions of Senator Ennis?
All right.
Seeing none, thank you very much.
All right.
We're going to give Paul's 15 seconds.
He is.
Of course it is. James, come on up. Please just push the button and turn that on. Thank you.
Perfect. Good morning. Thank you for your patience. I forgot to sign in the hubbub of the comings and goings of the different bills. So for the record, James Key Wallace, Executive Director of the New Hampshire Business Finance Authority. It's nice to be here this morning with you all. Senator Ennis did an excellent job introducing the bill. He, I think, hit all the highlights. You know, I just always like to emphasize a few things, that the BFA is a self-funded entity, not funded by the state. We use no taxpayer dollars. This bill does not appropriate funds to the BFA. It simply gives us permission to go evaluate transactions that bring companies into the state, grow companies into the state, and then take them through the approval process, which goes through our board and the executive council. It is notable, the increase in costs. You know, I think that's a global issue, a national issue. Building a factory today, you know, it's public record. The New Balance transaction we did just recently was a $70 million project. When I started at the BFA several years ago, our kind of big type transaction was $20 million. So it's amazing what's happened. So this just lets us keep up. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thanks very much. Is there
Thank you.
anyone else who is not signed up, like to speak on Senate Bill 525? Seeing none, I close the hearing. And yeah.
Thank you, Senator. We'll open the hearing on 565 in just a moment. I see our prime sponsor has arrived. Thank you. This is it. Well, good morning, Senator Waters.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senator David Waters, District 4, here to introduce Senate Bill 565. And I'm sure you'll all be delighted to see there's a greatly reduced and simplified amendment, which you have before you, 0018S. And since that is what I'd like the committee to consider, that's what I will speak to. This bill comes to you because of concerns about what is happening to the insurance industry and coverage due to increasing costs due to weather events. We're certainly familiar with this in New Hampshire, whether over in the western part of the state where Senator Fenton is, or the northern part of the state where others of you are, or along the seacoast. We've seen sequence of storms over the last few years, not unexpected under what the state climate plans have predicted over many years, that this is the kind of more extreme precipitation that we're going to see, and so much higher costs to the damages to people's homes and to their businesses. Also, we've seen some particular events. I mean, just to note that home and business insurance premiums have gone up 74%, 2008 to 2024. Home prices have gone up 40% in that period. In New Hampshire, much more than that, but you can see it's a compounding thing. The rates are up and the cost of the value of the property is up as well. There's been 27 weather and climate events last year, each costing over $1 billion. And I just saw yesterday an estimate for this most recent snowstorm a couple weeks ago. They think that's going to be a $15 billion event in the states that were impacted by it. So I became very concerned about what our consumers were going to be facing from the insurance industry and what information they needed to deal with that. So what the bill does is it asks the Commissioner of Insurance to prepare a report every 5 years on to essentially what are the eyes and ears as to what's happening about insurance increases, and particularly related to this issue of increasing storms and coastal flooding. I want to say that you'll see what I started out with, and the reason I ended up with something that I think is really quite doable is because of the great help from Commissioner Betancourt and his staff, particularly Jennifer Smith, who worked through to create this amendment here and a plan that they feel can work and protect consumers as well. So what it does is it asks that there be a report to promote the awareness and incentives for fortified homes and commercial property standards and other mitigation and resiliency programs. And then to increase awareness of those, to provide the report on a very available basis to purchasers of personal property and commercial property of risks insurance related to fortified home and commercial standards and other mitigation or resiliency programs. So there's something you can do about this if you have information. And it references here RSA 483B22, which I'll discuss in a minute, but we also have the FEMA flood maps, particularly for the coastal areas, National Flood Insurance Program, and any other available maps. Ones that First Street banks are putting out now are really seen to be the state of the art for New England because they include more recent information and some projections that FEMA mapping, which are notoriously always out of date, do not include. And so this would deal with what are the future risks that might be to New Hampshire consumers due to these increases in costs. Now that I think is particularly relevant based on what's been happening in other parts of the country. Of course, out west it's more wildfires, but we see Farm State and other insurance companies just completely pulled out of the market. And then look at the Gulf Coast and Florida as well. And that, Florida set up its own insurer of last resort risk pool. And that's the money ran out very quickly after the most recent storms. But Louisiana, Texas, other places have tried to get a handle around what are we going to do for our consumers who might be losing their insurance. And this has become really relevant to New Hampshire because of the storms that we had last January and February, devastated the Maine coast. If you have any experience going up there in Massachusetts, some damage for us. We were a little lucky as to how those winds and that high tide flooding came in. But this is what we're seeing when premiums rise. It's getting harder to find insurance. Insurance companies are pulling back from high-risk areas. Some insurers have gone broke. The quality of coverage is starting to decline. You may still be able to get coverage, but it's not going to cover what you may end up needing if you've had a flood on the river you're on, or the road you're on, or on the coastal area. We also have a recent report the New York Times republished of state by state, particularly the impacts along the coasts because of sea level rise. And it estimated the billions of dollars of increased costs that there may be, not even storm damage, but related insurance costs state by state. If you're interested, it lays it out, 10-year intervals and costs and so on and so forth, and you can even drill down to the county to see what's happening for New Hampshire. So I think that this is a case for consumer information. And please note, particularly, I want to return back to RSA 483B22. This is a provision that we put in about a dozen years ago, Senator Stiles and I, arising from the Coastal Risk and Hazards Commission report, to ask that every 5 years there would be a scientific analysis that would be done that would update the projections for 2050 and 2100 of sea level rise, extreme precipitation, and storm surge. We've done it a couple of times, and it's also in state statute to only do that certain departments such as the DOT, DES, Fish and Game, other property owners and folks who regulate these areas are required to use those figures in their planning, construction, and so on and so forth. The new report will be released sometime this month. The technical volume is about 100 pages, which goes through all the projections for 2050 and 2100. We're going to be a little more conservative than Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Maine, maybe 1 to 2 feet sea level rise by 2050, but maybe 3 to 5 by 2100. And you see all the pictures of sunny day flooding, king tide flooding, taking out neighborhoods in Hampton Beach and elsewhere, and even parts of Portsmouth and so on. So, this will give us the figures that are for New Hampshire and for that planning. So that's why what I've done in here is embed that report and to say that the periodicity of this report will be linked to the availability of that 5-year report that we'll get through RSA 43B23. So that gives us the most state-of-the-art look at what's happening in the state. And then lastly, I will say that very similar legislation and consumer information, some like this, some much more extensive, have been passed in Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Louisiana, Texas, Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut. You can look at all those bills and see just how they've gone at it. The second part of the bill, and I think this is particularly relevant to what you heard on Senate Bill 562 earlier, had a lot of discussion with Commissioner Betancourt and about that bill and various approaches to take to it. And I think in some ways these two dovetail, but it's also why I included the Section 2 to put into statute, and this is from the National Insurance there's two organizations. This is the definition that they have, the National Insurance Organizations. Fortified home and commercial property standards and other mitigation resiliency programs means measures taken to reduce loss to extreme weather events, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why that's in here. I think we needed something in statute so that there be reference to it. And to keep this really, I think this version of the bill will not have an FN because this report is going to be put on the website. So that's what it will do. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. Periodicity. I've never heard that used, but I appreciate the word. I like
professor to another.
I like adjectival, but I can never find a place to use it. So
now you know.
Adjectival. So there you go. Are there any questions for Senator Waters? All right, seeing none, appreciate your testimony very much. I would note that there is no fiscal impact of this. Yeah. Okay. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on Senate Bill 565? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. We could exec a few things if you folks don't mind. All right. Do we have a motion to go into executive session? And a second? For me, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are in executive session. Let's start with today. If I can find my calendar notice. And we already did 416, 562. Are we ready for that one or no?
462, Mr. Chairman?
I'm looking at 562. Yeah? Gentlemen?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so we have a motion on 562. We have a motion about to pass from Senator Reardon. I will second from Senator Murphy. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. I'll move consent. Second from Senator Reardon. All in favor of consent, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. I'll take that one out.
525?
Yes, definitely 525. for the BFA. I'll make a motion about to pass.
Second.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I'll move consent. And we have a second. All in favor of consent, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Can we jump back up to 487? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting in a rush. Okay, Senator Ribbon will take out 525 should we need it. I'm on cruise control. Okay. 487, credit union members to be paid.
I'll move out to pass.
A motion about to pass with a second. Discussion on this one. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I'll move consent.
Second.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, very good. And then the last one. I'll take it out. The last one is Senator Waters. I'm going to move out to pass. We have a second. Is there discussion on this one?
We should do it now.
And the fact it doesn't have a fiscal note, and I see it as beneficial, 565.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's no cost. It seems beneficial. The insurance department apparently doesn't have any objection, or they would have been here.
And they would be.
Oh, you are here, so no objection. Okay, right. The amendment fixes everything, right? Yes. So we will be voting on the amended version, amendment 0018.
And it gives a shout out to the
Yes, it does. Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right, so we have a motion with a second. All in favor, please say aye. Oops. We need a motion on the amendment. Thank you.
I'll move the amendment.
I'll second the amendment. So we'll vote first on the amendment. All in favor of amendment 0018, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and we have a motion on the bill that remains alive with a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. And all in favor of consent, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Who would like to take this out? Senator Fenton, it's yours. Are there any others anyone would like to bring up?
Do you want to take up 482?
482. Get there? Is there may be an amendment on that one. 482. Oh, yes. There's some discussions around this one, Senator, and there's a desire to change a couple of the limits. A little bit of a compromise between the AARP and some of the kiosk folks. I'd like to give this one a little more time if we could.
You are the chairman.
Okay. Any others?
Second.
All right. All in favor of coming out of exec, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are out of executive session with our business of the day being complete. We will recess to next week. Not bad.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Nice. It was long, a little long, but hard day. But I'm listening.